Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today is August 14th, and we're doing business and hardware and software stories, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty much all business with a lot of technology thrown in. We've got a lot of collapse. We've got a lot of updates. We've got some product launches.
We have like one. I just found like a mega article that was like every tech collapse for the last year.
Well, starting this off, we've got some follow-up. And the first and biggest follow-up is...
Asus MSI released motherboard BIOS updates to address Intel CPU bug.
Yeah, PSA, public service announcement. If you have a 13th or 14th gen Intel desktop CPU, you really should go update your BIOS because it will probably help prevent you from having issues. This is a BIOS update that is meant to... I don't know if it's the final one either because Intel commented on this and they said, hey, this is supposed to address two issues that have been found in the microcode. One of them is definitely a microcode issue. The other one is kind of a mix of the processor and motherboards. Like the CPU doesn't really have any limits in it, and some of the motherboards are pushing the envelope. But I think that was a little bit by design from Intel. It's like, hey, it's unlocked. You can do whatever you want. And then it turns out a lot of those have problems. So this will help. This won't help if your CPU is already damaged to the point that it's horribly unstable. That's the other thing that happens is when your CPU is starting to have problems, it doesn't work as well as it did at lower voltages. So if you run a burn-in test, it's stable. But then when you're just bouncing around lightweight applications of the desktop, that's when it becomes unstable because it doesn't need as much voltage to do the simpler tasks as opposed to the complicated tasks. And the instability starts in the low end, not the high end.
That is odd.
That is, well, it makes sense for the way that it degrades, but it is an unusual happenstance that the stability has crept in that way. I actually have I'm working on an update for the thing that we did, but your guess is as good as mine. I was just like, okay, I'm going to run the software and see if it's stable. I don't know. It hasn't been a good couple of weeks for Intel.
No, we've had a lot of stories about that.
No. But this is actually good news from Intel.
Intel Foundry achieves major milestones.
18A is powered on and healthy, they say, on track for next generation client and server chip production for 2025.
The team that worked on this are like carrying the team on their backs.
They need to release all of this stuff like immediately. Now,
which could be bad though, because if you push to rush it out.
Yeah. Now some of the macroscopically when we talk about the news is Intel's not doing well. It's like these are also desktop chips. I don't know if you've noticed, but like desktop computer chips, they don't really matter anymore. It's like, oh, it's Xeon and Raptor Lake. Like that's basically a rounding error in everybody's books. AMD, Intel, Amazon, everybody. It's all about AI and AI acceleration and GPUs and the whole 9 yards around that. Oh wait, look, AMD has CPUs too.
The AMD Ryzen 7 9700X and Ryzen 5 9600X review. Zen 5 is alive.
This is Anantech's article. We did a video. There's 4 CPUs that are launching. These are the first 2 at the time we're shooting this. There's 2 more yet to launch. So you've got another video on update and review. So this is the 6 and the 8 core coming, or the 12 and the 16 core. And the reviews were pretty mixed. So like if you're just interested in gaming type workloads, there's not a lot of uplift from Zen 4 to Zen 5. But if you're into AVX 512 or other types of workloads that need that, then the CPU has a lot of cool features around that. But this is only the 6 and the 8 core. If you're interested in high-end multimedia stuff, you would probably opt for the 12 or the 16 core, not the 6 or the 8 core. So it's I like the architecture changes. I like Zen 5, but I get why gamers want more. They need more.
For less.
Yeah. I mean, the 8-core is not a bad gaming CPU, although this does perhaps signal that whenever AMD gets around to releasing the 3D V-cache version of these, like the super gaming CPU with the extra L3 cache, that thing has the potential to be insanely monstrous. So that's really good. Coming on the heels of everybody's quarterly earnings reports and that sort of thing.
All over the news. That was all like, when I looked up tech stories, it was just all
what's going
earnings
on with the
calls.
earnings?
Yeah.
Now, NVIDIA is doing well as they are, but they're kind of tight-lipped about a few things that didn't quite add up. But somebody asked Supermicro, hey, are you going to ship all those NVIDIA products? And they had some interesting things to say.
Supermicro Computer Inc. Q4 2024 earnings call transcript, which is now behind a paywall. It wasn't earlier when I looked at it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. This is the Seeking Alpha paywall, or the Seeking Alpha call transcript. A lot of people wrote different stories about this, so I thought I would just link to the transcript for you to read it. Basically, somebody, I think Wells Fargo asked, hey, what about the revenue from shipping all of these NVIDIA systems? And Supermicro disclosed, there's a bit of a delay. So I guess it's the GB200. No, I can't remember. There's been a little bit of a delay, and it's probably going to push the revenue into the very end of 2024, or more likely into 2025. Supermicro is still going to sell like current gen NVIDIA stuff. So if you got a customer that's super in a hurry, fine. But NVIDIA hasn't really followed up or commented on this. But it's just it's going to need a little bit of a design revision, or some type of something is needed before these are deployed in mass. And so that moves a little bit of Supermicro's revenue. But on the call, they said, we still expect to make $26 to $30 billion. First world problems. It's like, oh,
they didn't make enough money. They're going to be eating out of the trash can tonight.
Supermicro has moved pretty dramatically into the Fortune 500 recently, and they are climbing the ladder like crazy because everybody wants to buy AI. That's another reason that Intel and AMD are suffering a little bit, is that, the core, the compute core doesn't really matter anymore because it's not doing most of the computation by volume computation. And so Intel finds itself in a position where, Xeon's almost, it's not that they don't matter, it's just that they're part of an ecosystem of a solution. And Intel doesn't have an AI product that the market is insanely hungry for. Even AMD has their AI stuff, and they're selling that like hotcakes, which is surprising given that I think Intel has the larger and more deliberately organized and structured software teams. And so Intel has their Gaudi 2 and Gaudi 3 products, and the Gaudi 2 pricing is insanely aggressive. So I'm surprised it hasn't had more uptick by enterprise customers, but you have Microsoft and other customers that are using the bejesus out of AMD's AI solution, and that carried, they got $1 billion of profit on a product in the same quarter that it launched, which had never happened. And so I think Intel's at a bit of a disadvantage, and I don't think that they can say that they've done the same thing with their AI stuff. It's like, hey, we launched this and we had a customer for it before the wafers were dry.
Well, we have some stories about AI, and there's some nervousness around AI in general too right now.
The other thing that's nervous in the business sector is subscriptions. People are getting really tired of subscriptions, and it's just like, I don't want to pay for this from now until the end of time. It makes things illiquid. People don't have money for other things, which turns out to be
and you cut back on entertainment first, that's non-essential spending.
And you get stories like this.
Netflix suffers the, quote, biggest leaking disaster in anime history, quote, as significant chunk of its 2024 slate appears online.
It appeared online.
A good day if you're an anime fan.
It may have appeared on a hard drive, just in case anyone cares to watch it later.
I heard, so I didn't watch Arcane, but I've heard that that's very, very popular. And I heard that like an early draft of Arcane leaked as well.
Oh, interesting.
So if you're into that, you might be able to find it somewhere on the internet.
And with all of these, HBO Max and Disney Plus and everybody consolidating, it's time for the B-tier subscription platforms to really shine.
They're doing pretty good though. Crunchyroll passes 15 million monthly paid subscribers, and if you're like, that's a lot. I think, did they say, was it Peacock only had 30?
Yeah.
I was like, the weebs come out in force.
Sony owns this. They paid a lot of money for it, and they locked some things down. They did away with the community and the participation aspects of that, but people are moving to this like crazy because everything else is so wildly more expensive.
It's Crunchyroll, that's probably still like a net negative since Sony bought it and probably hiked up the price. But
and then now more into the collapse section.
Delta to CrowdStrike. Don't blame us for your tech problems. I wasn't sure who to believe here because apparently Delta has had a much harder time getting things back compared to literally every other airline. And so they're both pointing their fingers at each other, but there's not a definitive answer yet.
Even Microsoft chose to step in here, which I was not expecting.
Yeah, that was like snuck in at the very end of that article.
Yeah, Microsoft's like, we can help you with this. And Delta's like, no, we've got it. And they didn't have it. They didn't have it at all.
Yeah, so then they released this, and it's like, I don't know. I kind of hate Delta, too, so it's like...
The lawyer letters are also public in this, which is fun to check out. If you check out the lawyer letters, at least between Delta and CrowdStrike and Delta, but CrowdStrike's lawyer response was pretty aggressive, which I guess you would have to be if you're going to...
If you're dealing with Delta.
Yeah. And their position was basically, hey, we reached out to you to try to help you. You declined help. And also, a lot of your stuff doesn't even run Windows, so our products wouldn't apply because it's not Windows or Linux or any of the other platforms that CrowdStrike supports. And those systems were also down. So, like, was it a weird situation where those systems depend on LDAP or Active Directory or something you can't log into? Like, what was it that you were doing that made it so fragile? Because it's obviously not just this Windows update by itself that caused problems. There's obviously more to the story here. And if this turns into a lawsuit, you're going to have to disclose that publicly into your shareholders. It's like, do you really want that? And it's like, oh, that's kind of aggressive.
It'll be fun to watch. Boy, I hope they keep arguing.
I remember a time when Delta wasn't a terrible airline.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, we used to fly Delta. And I remember if you were a kid, you could get, this is before 9/11, you could go up to the cockpit at the start of the flight and you could talk to the pilot and they'd give you a little pair of wings, like a little pin you could wear if you were a kid. Before
the pandemic, I had status with Delta, and I really wish that I had done well, I don't know about now, but it was really easy to get access to the lounge, and they had a $500 lifetime membership in the lounge, and I was like, I don't know, $500 is a lot to spend on that. But then later I was like, I should have definitely done that.
Yeah, it would have been worth. Do you think they still honor that?
No.
Not a chance.
No.
Not with everything going subscription model.
No, and it's hard to get in the lounge now because everybody was like, oh, that's a really good deal. And so now the lounge is insanely overcrowded and terrible service. So it's a little bit like, oh, they've made it terrible.
All these people are ruining my exclusive experience.
Speaking of things that are made terrible.
Video game actors are officially on strike over AI, specifically motion capture people who were not included in some negotiations earlier this year.
Yeah, it turns out that you can have a few actors do all of the movements, and then once you've captured that, it goes into a database, and you can just apply it to any model that you want. Disney originally did this. This article doesn't go into this, but the Disney princesses, they had 3 or 4 models.
Oh, yeah, models, and then they would record them, and they'd have drawing sessions with them.
Yeah, so all the different Disney princesses over the years is just, they always go back to the original footage, and it's like, oh, this is how we animate this. And
this is how this person moves, yeah.
They all move the same. Up to the point, there's a couple of YouTube videos that accuse Disney of literally recycling the same animations for different films, like just captured from the cells differently, when really those may have been all the same source material from a human performer, and Disney was just like, we don't really know how to draw this and make it
look real, sense. Yeah. Oh, that sucks though if you're a mocap performer and you put your heart and soul into performance, and then it just
yeah.
I mean, think about all the characters in Baldur's Gate. They all have really unique body language.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, that is true. It's like it is better to just. But then if you can use that on the B tier games later, it's like, oh look,
just reuse it for the mobile game.
Yeah, the Wilhelm scream. Everybody will recognize the Wilhelm. Well, we have video games in the future that have. It's like, oh, that's the Andy Serkis movement.
Oh,
like the Wilhelm scream. Because we do like to copy paste things.
Except we won't know who Wilhelm was in this case, because they'll just replicate all of it with AI, and then there won't be new mocap performers, and we'll just keep reading and seeing the same drivel over and over. It's a bad time for the arts.
I don't have an excellent segue for our next story, but it is the kind of thing that we love to talk about and point out, and it happens in the real world. And so your friends that are experiencing this horror may not really have the context. And, you can definitely do the neckbeard thing and explain to them. It's like, oh, let me explain how you're suffering.
This will make you super popular at parties. You should totally do it. None of us are getting invited to parties. Why this company's biggest fans turned against it. I think we did a story similar to this, when some of this stuff broke down, when the app first started
Sonos,
a new launch.
Definitely, engagement challenge. Do you have a Sonos product? Has it gotten worse over time? They're the poster children for, let's build an amazing product. Oh, people really like our product. how can we wring more money from? It's like, let's change the functionality after the fact and make it worse and worse and worse and worse. This
It
is
was a series of app updates. I think we did a story where like you couldn't make playlists anymore, and now they're saying like basic functionality like alarms aren't working.
Yeah. There's a company called, I think, Rune, and they make some really amazing software, but they are very, like, I'm surprised that people are willing to pay what they're willing to pay for Rune. And even like some of the like Rune hardware, it's basically just a cheap mini PC that they've put their software on. It's like, this is amazing. It's not. It's a mini PC that costs like $100 from Shenzhen or Hong Kong or somewhere, and it's because people really want, a 20-year appliance. It's like, I want my music experience for my digital music collection to be the same from now until the end of time, and people just can't help but make the software terrible and crappy. And so if you have Sonos, like, what have you experienced? Or what, other products, what have you experienced? The Nest thermostat, it's like the Nest thermostat is on the order of like 5 years old, and that, like, it's been a whole saga. Whereas I literally have a mercury filled thermostat hooked up to my modern like Seer 21, and it's a day-night thermostat. Like, there's two different thermostats, and it automatically will use this mercury switch when it's daytime and this mercury switch when it's nighttime. And how it knows what time it is it counts the number of 60 hertz cycles from the AC input. And so, like, that thermostat can run a modern HVAC just fine.
No, you should do it on an app, though. Have you thought about doing it on an app?
You can have more than one thermostat hooked in, and then like there is a way to still have an app, but also the fallback functionality. But nobody ever designs it that way or wires it that way, as the case
Because it
may
costs
be.
more money. They don't want to do that. They just want to provide absolutely nothing or very basic idea of like a product, and then.
Oh, that makes me so angry. Makes me so angry. Just because it doesn't need to be that way. There are enough of us that recognize, hey, once the book turns 3 years old, it doesn't have to burst into flames, because that would have been a thing. Uh-huh. Like, think of the turn of the 20th century. It's like, we want books to decay really rapidly. Oh, I know. Let's use lots of acid in the pages. Then you have to buy another book. Or you can only loan a library book 11 times before it disintegrates. Or 8 times. Like, this is... It's like
we're living in crazy town.
Yeah. I always like the way that the Ferengi were... Somebody on our last week's episode was like, oh, you realize that the Ferengi were supposed to be a caricature of late-stage capitalism. It's like, yes, I think that's obvious to everyone. But also in Deep Space Nine, I love the episodes of Deep Space Nine that have, Quark from the bar, because whenever he has to go back to, his home planet, there's like fees and taxes and levies for things, and then you're expected to tip on top of it. And it's just like, wow, this is dark, because
I recognize this. This is where we live.
It was meant to be satirical whenever Deep Space Nine was written, and then as we have progressed 20 years since then, it's like, oh my, we seem to have gone even more in that direction.
The tipping is out of control. Like, I get it when you're performing a service, but it's like tip on everything, and it's like, I don't.
It's not good. And speaking of things that look like they're a slight improvement, but
Apple revises DMA compliance for App Store link outs, applying fewer restrictions and a new fee structure.
So Apple is being so weird about things in Europe. Like, one of the things that has not recently, but you could do screen mirroring, but you can't do screen mirroring in Europe, which may or may not have something to do with DMA compliance, like malicious compliance. And so there was a whole bunch of rules that was easy to run afoul of if you were a developer, saying, hey, if you would like to install my application not through the App Store, through another way, there's a way to do that. Click here to go read that. Apple is not okay with that, which is kind of wild, because Apple really doesn't want you to think of your phone as a generic computation device.
No, it's a lifestyle.
I really think a lot of this is a distraction. Some of the more egregious violations going on right now with how Apple treats things is that they deliberately harm the performance of web apps and things that can use the Apple GPU. And they say that they want to improve the battery life, but I think that should be up to the end user. Like, if you can run an application through WebAssembly or like Web GPU or something like that, and the user wants to run that application in a browser context or add it to their home screen like as if it were an application, but it is actually a downloadable progressive web app, that is a reasonable way to have an application that is sandboxed in a better security sandbox than you get with a native application, but that could also have direct access to some hardware acceleration for better performance. But Apple is scared to death of that because that does...
cuts into their bottom line.
Yeah, because they can't charge, it's a web app. How do you charge per website? I mean,
they're cut completely out of that.
Apple would love to get to a point where they can do that. Apple also had a feature that they debuted this week where they've noticed that mobile websites have basically become unusable because of the ads. Oh, no.
Oh. We're still here. Nothing happened. There was no break.
Bottom line is that Apple should not play games with like web apps. Like, you should be all in or all out. And if you're going to be all out, at least be brave and say, hey, we don't like web apps anymore because they cost us money. And it's like...
If you were just honest about it. I mean, I wouldn't like it, but if they were just honest to the user.
Yeah, it's like, this is capitalistic, but also they're insanely dishonest about the context here, and they don't want to be upfront about it. And that signals a bigger problem and a more cultural problem.
As the great Judge Judy once said, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Yeah, that is a good way to say that, because it frames the conversation all in the wrongest way possible. So,
speaking of pissing on your leg and oh wait, never mind.
It's this one.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, there's umbrellas here.
Comprehensive list of 2024 tech layoffs. So we've actually added a collapse section to the business, like a subsection under business that you guys have probably seen if you've been watching for a while. This goes through all of them that have happened in 2024.
Eventbrite, LegalZoom, Techstars, Mobius, Infineon, Jam City, Dell, Intel.
That's just for August. Yeah. There's July.
And then there's July, and then
you gotta keep scrolling. June. Yeah.
Now, if you're thinking, wait a minute, Dell. The Dell story is pretty dark.
Dell lays off thousands of workers in sales, quote, reorganization.
Now, remember I said that cores don't really matter as much, and that's true. See also Dell. But look at the comprehensive solution of NVIDIA going to Supermicro and ASRock and basically every provider under the sun and saying, we're not selling rack mount servers that contain GPUs. We're selling entire racks, entire solutions, where you buy it a rack at a time, an 80 kilowatt liquid cooled rack at a time. You don't have a lot of control over really any aspects of that sale because you have to buy it as a complete solution. So a company like Dell, a little bit of a disadvantage when you're dealing with a customer that can afford the really expensive and very high margin items. Meanwhile, if you're not interested in the really expensive, really high margin items, you're scared to death of missing out, so you don't know what to buy. So you just coast on the hardware that you've already had for 7 years. Another year.
You didn't have to call me out like that.
She's like, I don't need another. Oh yeah, if you're ready for another machine, there's plenty of machines here at the office.
Mine's fine right now. Every now and then the fans get really loud, but
that means it's doing something.
It's probably, no, it probably just needs to be cleaned because my cat likes to lay on top of it.
There's definitely a lot of stories in collapse, and this is also, it's like companies start feeling the squeeze and they start looking for ways to make money, some that don't necessarily make any logical sense. And this is a follow-up on our nonsense story from last week.
New Logitech. Now Logitech says the Forever Mouse was just an idea, but with the tone of, it's just a prank, bro.
Yeah, everybody didn't like that. And Logitech said, really? Really?
Well, we were just thinking about it. We were just putting feelers out. But if you guys don't dig it, I mean, that's fine.
You don't want to subscribe to your mouse? What? Yeah, they didn't really want to subscribe to their mouse. I seem to have duplicated some of the stories.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Google is discontinuing the Chromecast line.
There's still going to be a Chromecast. It's just not called Chromecast anymore.
Where's that website that's like the Google graveyard? Yeah, I was like, the Chromecast gets added.
They actually posted on Twitter. There was something like, when I get back from vacation and I've got this. Like, what's going on? Chromecast with Google TV was released in 2022, but now Google says the technology has evolved dramatically. And no.
Has it?
So it's like, With the Google TV streamer as a major update to the Chromecast may finally even rival the pricier Apple TV 4K. These large companies misunderstand what people want to the extent that it's kind of hilarious. The people that are on the bleeding edge of wanting the Chromecastiest Chromecast are not really interested in, okay, I mean, they are interested in being able to stream easily from Disney Plus and Hulu and Netflix, but they also want to stream really easily, like their giant media collection. And Plex Media Server makes that easy, but even Plex Media Server is interested in making money from now until the end of time. So, and there's not really a great way to manage your collections. And the murkiness around, hey, can I format shift my DVD to something else, means that if you do that, it's basically a DIY solution, which is unfortunate. So I think people are left in the dark with technology that is perpetually half broken by design, because no one wants anything to work really well, because everybody is scared to death of losing money on their particular solution that's stuck in time. And if you think about that from like innovation, it's like, wait a minute, it sounds like all the things that you're saying cause innovation to grind to a halt.
Well, there's a reason sometimes it's hard to find good stories, like happy stories, week to week. Because it's like, oh, everything's just kind of getting a little bit worse.
Yeah. Speaking of innovation grinding to a halt,
Google Chrome warns uBlock Origin may soon be disabled.
Now, if this was a popular enough extension that would cause people to switch browsers, Google would absolutely not be considering this. If Chrome was nascent and Firefox was the dominant player, would Google do this? No, absolutely not. But Google is very popular. Google Chrome is very, very popular. And now's the time. They've probably reached peak market share. It's probably not going to get any larger from here. So, yeah, taking control from an economic and shareholder standpoint, this makes sense.
They've claimed because there's something like, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but there was like, oh, they haven't updated this one particular portion of their code, and that's why we're not supporting it anymore.
It's like,
but I don't believe that.
Yeah, it seems unlikely. But there's also really good browsers like Brave. Brave is getting better all the time. Firefox they've made a lot of changes lately because they recognize that users are kind of struggling using Firefox for this, that, and the other.
I don't have any issues with Firefox.
I like Firefox.
It's
reasonable.
It's been years, and I still say firebugging instead of like the console. I'm like, oh, I have to firebug this.
I remember when Firebug was a plugin. Like
it wasn't native to the thing.
Yeah, ooh, that's darkness. Although, I wonder what Paul Irish is into these days, because he usually had a really good beat on the pulse of which browser was really good and what's going on with innovation. Google got him. The last I checked, he was working for Google, but
he's making a lot of money, but he's a little dead inside now.
Sorry, but also, hey, good luck. Hope things are amazing. You know who things are not amazing for?
After a rash of stolen cars, well, this is not bad. After a rash of stolen cars, Hyundai and Kia's new anti-theft software is showing results.
It turns out you just have to try just a little bit, and you can defeat would-be car thieves.
Well, and they said in 2023, I think only 30% of cars had applied this software update, and now they're up to 60%. So maybe your car has applied the update, and now you won't get it stolen.
Maybe that's what was happening to the dead battery. It's like the car is desperately trying to download and apply the software update, but something is going wrong, and so it just drains the battery. It's like, didn't even realize.
Now you can't steal it at all, though, because it's not moving.
But also, why is there a radio in the car when the car's just always phoning home? Like, that's weird.
Yeah, you might need that update.
That's so strange.
They got to put Bejeweled on your screen.
You can't always put Bejeweled on your screen when your device is locked down with a mobile device management software, an MDM. And sometimes things go wrong with the mobile device management software.
Cyberattack knocks Mobile Guardian MDM offline and wipes thousands of student devices. This is like a modern version of the dog ate my homework.
Yeah. It more than 2,500 schools in 50 countries worldwide. Oops. So they just never planned for something has gone horribly wrong with the servers that control the devices, and if the devices have problems, they'll just wipe. 13,000 students in Singapore from 26 secondary schools had their devices remotely wiped by the perpetrator.
Do you think this is a lesson now in keeping backups for those students?
Did
Though whether it lets you export stuff, I guess that's not.
This is we really need better computer hygiene. This is the kind of thing where you want to have your students store the important stuff in a digital locker, and the device almost doesn't matter, because if somebody does something to the device or the device gets into a weird state, it would be amazing to be able to reset the device and then just log into the device and it'll download your stuff again. And that's kind of where Microsoft has been going with like Autopilot and Intune and some of the services they offer in Azure. It's to the point now where if you're a corporate customer, you can just go to a Microsoft store and buy a Surface device, or go to Best Buy and buy a Surface device and log in with your special corporate account, which is not a Microsoft account. I mean, technically it's a Microsoft account because eventually it makes it back to Azure, but it's not like the same kind of stuff you might be thinking of for a home user. But you sign in with your corporate account, and the device will get enrolled as a corporate device, and its serial number will be preserved, and its settings will be preserved. And if the company has a policy for doing whole device encryption, the decryption keys for that might be saved as part of the corporate policy. It might give the user an opportunity to deploy applications that it needs for the fleet. It might give the user an opportunity to automatically configure Microsoft Office or email or whatever. And so the device almost doesn't matter. So it's like, oh, the device got wiped. It didn't have any user data on it anyway. In this case, they were not as fortunate.
No.
Sadly.
A lot of kids who didn't do their homework, though. Very fortunate.
You get another week.
Ah.
Another couple of days.
Or yeah, maybe longer, depending on how long those devices are out of commission.
And that's how long you'll have to wait. Another couple of days for Friday's nonsense section, along with AI and space and what else?
I think it might just be AI, space, and nonsense.
Yeah, the Boeing people are still stuck in space. We know.
Which, yeah. Well, maybe not by the time they see it. You know, hope springs eternal, but it's not looking good.
That's your teaser for. They might be stuck there until 2025. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. We'll see you then.
Bye.